But I think what happens is the new year comes and you're surrounded by people, and some of those people are making these lofty goals for what they're going to accomplish within the new year. And I think there's a pressure that comes from even those conversations that you yourself also have to make some ambitious goal to keep up with those who are around you, or so society perceives you a certain way. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the very best version of yourself. And it's a new year.
New year.
2024. How are you feeling, Caesar?
It's a big year.
I feel like you say that every year.
No, I mean, I feel like it's going to be a big year. Lots of good things, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially for us. So.
Exactly. I think that this podcast is going to evolve a lot this year. I know towards the end of last year, Caesar and I kind of slipped off. I think life got busy, work got busy, and we didn't really do a good job of finding how to fit things together. Mm-hmm. Even when it came to things like, I'm very passionate about doing this, but you come to that point where you can't even not to say you can't find time for your passions, but I feel like towards the end of the year, I was trying to like rest and figure my life out. So we didn't post a lot towards the end of last year. I feel like we were really consistent in 2022, and then 2023, we had a lot of change happen last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of things happened, a lot of good things. Mm-hmm. Nothing like, honestly, not a lot of bad things, a lot of good things, but it made us have to rethink how we, I don't know, I guess live.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So this year, I think there's a lot of things I would like for the podcast. Obviously, I have Caesar here with me to help me, because Caesar does a lot of the things that, not that I can't do them, but Caesar's more efficient. So, gotta work smarter, not harder. So yep. Caesar edits the podcast, pulls clips. I just tell him what clips to pull and, think of some of the broader strategy behind the podcast and plan episodes. But this year I'm thinking we do a bit of a rebrand.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's one of the things we'd like to accomplish early in the year and really kind of fill this podcast out, have more of a, I guess mission behind it,
Yeah.
Not to say there's not one now, but I'd like to make it a little bit more explicit and a little bit more resonating with the people I'd like to reach.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's great.
Yeah. She's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Go Sunny. Go Sunny. But that with the new year obviously comes a lot of new things, new year, new us. Not really, but I wanted to take the chance to talk about kind of the pressure that comes with the new year. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great point. I mean, I know for the most part, people make big resolutions every year. We've all been down that rabbit hole of I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, and then 2 weeks into New Year, it's
complete fall off.
Yeah, you just back to whatever it was that you were doing 2 weeks before that. Another thing too, maybe we'll talk about this, is why wait till the new year to make a big change?
Yeah, I mean, so my thing is the new year, I do think it's obviously very symbolical of a new beginning. Mm-hmm. Having a fresh start, a fresh slate, we can almost put the entire year that we've just experienced behind us. And I think especially if you've had a harder year, you want to do that. There's a comfort in a new year. It's renewal for a lot of us. And I think that's a good thing. It really is kind of that clean slate. But it's, like you mentioned, it's not the only time we can change our lives. But I also think that there's a pressure to make change in your life because the new year is happening. And there's a couple different areas I think we're pressured in when it comes to New Year's. I think the first is society. We have the new year and there's that term New Year's resolutions. I hate the word resolution because I feel like you mentioned it's become this term where you just set this goal but you don't actually follow through. Yeah. There's not a lot of follow through. At least when I've heard when you use the term resolution, I think you have to shift your mindset about what you're doing and planning for yourself.
Yeah, no, again, it's I mean, what is when someone says like what is a resolution? Like when you look at the definition of resolution, it's if I remember correctly, it's like to evolve or change.
Yeah.
I might be 100% wrong about that, but
It's just wrong definition.
it's and it's like a commitment you're making to like be like to make a big change or maybe even a small change. You can have small like resolutions, right? Maybe it's like I'm not going to drink as much soda in a year or something like that, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe you write more or read more books, like things like that people usually make. But yeah, I definitely understand the beginning of the year and people doing it because it's like, yeah, again, fresh start and all of that. But I feel like in order for people to actually make a good change and something that actually sticks is not waiting till the end of the year, like waiting and doing it as soon as possible.
I don't think so. I
don't
think
think so?
I think that there's very much a possibility that, yes, you wait till the new year, say it's December, you don't want to get started. For one, December is a month where I feel like nothing productive happens. Not to say nothing productive, but it's holidays. Usually people are doing a lot. It's very chaotic, and not chaotic in a bad way, but it's chaotic with you traveling, trying to figure out what you're doing. End of year, I know in the corporate world, we're doing quarterly planning for the upcoming quarter. There's so many things going on. So, like, December doesn't feel like, if you waited, for instance, for the end till December, it doesn't feel like a good time to start. So the new year would be the perfect time to start something new. But I think what happens is the new year comes and you're surrounded by people, and some of those people are making these lofty goals for what they're going to accomplish within the new year. And I think there's a pressure that comes from even those conversations that you yourself also have to make some ambitious goal to keep up with those who are around you, or so society perceives you a certain way, when it's not necessary. Not to say not that there's not benefit of changing, but you don't need to make some goals to like keep up with others, if that makes sense. I think that sometimes we create goals not even for ourselves, but because we see everyone else setting like these goals, like I'm gonna run a marathon in 2024, or I'm gonna do this in 2024, and it makes you feel like you need to do that too. So it makes it even harder to set, I think, realistic goals. So like you said, you can set small goals, but I think often when it comes to the new year, we think so large and ambitiously, which is a good thing to be ambitious, but not realistically.
I think it's a good idea for people to use the new year again as a way to set goals and hopefully reach them by the end of the year. You know, like some people I know will say like, oh, this time next year I want to save money to buy a house or be in a better place. Like those are good goals to have, and finding ways to achieve them is obviously up to them at the end of the day.
But the way you phrase it also matters. Saying, this is something I learned too just from like work, but saying you want to save money, you could save $1 more and you reach your goal.
You have to,
but if you got to put like, you got to be able to measure it some way.
Yeah.
So like, I want to read more. Well, how much do you want to read? You know, you've got to set those
you have
like
to be specific.
Yes, you have to be specific about it, because otherwise you're not necessarily pushing yourself to be any better. If I saved $1 this year, I would have saved more than last year, you know, like it really depends the context of it all. But I think there's a pressure to make these ambitious goals and to think that this is what a successful person does. They have these big goals and they're going to do anything to reach them. I don't think that the new year has to be this place to, you know, completely change yourself. I think obviously when the clock strikes midnight on January 1st, like it did this year, January 1st, 2024, you're the same person. You know, nothing changes overnight. But you can create kind of a plan for what you'd like to accomplish in the year, but like make sure it's reasonable. Obviously, before the new year started, me and you sat down, went to a coffee shop. We were in Florida for the holidays, went to a coffee shop, and we sat down and reflected on 2023. We're like, well, what happened? I think it was on New Year's Eve that we were doing this.
It was a couple of days before.
Well,
I could have sworn it was a couple of days before. Actually, it was like the 30th. I could have sworn it was on the 30th.
Yeah. And we're reflecting what happened in 2023, and I was looking back at what I wanted to accomplish this year, and I started to think, was I even realistic with myself? I do think I accomplished a lot in 2023, but I think some of the goals I wasn't doing for myself. It was how I wanted others to perceive me as this successful, driven, ambitious person. I mean, you were doing the same thing. What do you feel?
I mean,
when you look back at like what?
Yeah, when I look back, I mean, I know that there's definitely things that that I said I was going to do. You know, all point went out. You know, for ourselves here, obviously we planned this podcast and wanted to like to hit a certain goal. I think we did a decent job with that. But on my own personal like YouTube channel that I have monetized, that I have, there's a little small audience there that wants me to like create content. I did not do much on that channel, and I put a lot of blame on myself for that, which is why I'm taking the responsibility to do like plan out like, all right, at least once a month I need to have a really good banger video, at least one. But I obviously want to shoot more than one. But when, you know, obviously when it comes to my own content planning, except for my podcast, not my podcast, but our podcast here, I set really high expectations for what I want to do and what I want to create. That it often like kind of stops me from doing it.
Yeah.
And I use YouTube, my own personal YouTube specifically, for a way for me to experiment and see what's working.
Yeah.
And other new things that we can try to, you know, test to see like what works and what doesn't. But I mean, as for here, I mean, for the most part, we put a lot of work and effort into this. I mean, you do the planning, I'll do the editing and the pulling clips. I think that's another thing too that we can improve on, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think thinking about last year, there's a lot of balls were dropped. Balls were dropped.
Yeah, and I think it's, for one, it's a good thing that we can look back and realize, you know, some of the things we didn't accomplish. And my thing is, I beat myself up about those things. I feel sometimes like I failed, like I'm a failure. And what I do is, because I feel that way about myself, I'm like, obviously other people see me that way. And I remember we were driving back, so we drove to Florida, which is like 10 and a half hours from Nashville.
I drove?
Oh, yes, Caesar drove. I drove when we were in Florida, like, you know, around the city. But I don't like the long distance drives, because semi trucks have no freaking chill, man. But yeah, when we were driving back to Nashville, I got a text from my dad, and he basically said like he was proud of me and Caesar. And that's a great thing to hear, obviously. Like, to him, it appeared that we're doing great. We're making names for ourselves. We're moving forward in our lives. And for me, like I said, it's nice to hear, but I also felt kind of like a fraud because I wasn't proud of where I am, because I think I set unrealistic goals for myself of like who I should be and where I should be in my life. So I started to think a lot about that too, just in reference to the new year of what am I actually trying to accomplish, and is this a goal for me, or is this a goal because I want others to see me a certain way, or I want the external validation. That's something I've always struggled with, is external validation. So often when I seek to do something, sometimes I don't even realize that I'm not doing it for myself. I'm just doing it because I want someone to be like, good job, or like it makes someone else's lives easier, but I don't really get the joy from it. So yeah, I was thinking a lot about that. And I think the other thing to think about when it comes to like where pressure might come from when it comes to New Year is not just that personal reflection, but comparing yourself to others. You know, when I was like in like my hometown, I met with like a couple friends, and I think it's easy to be like, man, I'm not doing as well as this person, or I need to be doing as well as this person. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, you compare yourself to other people, and maybe even the people that you see online that you actually have no personal relationships with.
Yeah.
You just see I mean, we've talked about this on a previous podcast where, like Instagram, TikTok, all these platforms, it's kind of like a highlight reel of like of your life. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that I imagine that people don't put online, because it's like separate from what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think you just reminded me of something too regarding that. Is like there's this podcast that you listen to.
That's so funny because I was just gonna bring that up.
Yeah. Well, Peyton Moreland, right?
Yeah.
Murder with My Husband. Binged. Like she's starting, she's like rebranding her podcast.
She's rebranding Binged into the Dark.
And she you talk to her on Instagram all the time. You DM her all the time.
I love. So honestly, I love this girl. Like I want to be her best friend because for one, I feel like I have a good radar of. Not to say I can judge who's good and who's bad, but I can tell her heart is like so pure with the greatest intentions. And I've loved her like true crime podcast for like 2 years now. It's the best part of my Monday, to be honest. Like obviously true crime is very sad, but she does a really great way of explaining cases, and she's also like doing it like to help victims' families, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I messaged her because I follow her on Instagram, and I see that throughout the last year, she posted a lot about like mental health, and someone who struggles like greatly with my mental health, like with anxiety, panic attacks, all of that. I found it interesting that she was going through all of this, but if you look at like Murder with My Husband or any of the work she puts out, you could never tell, because to me, like, this is so great and it requires so much. I know that it requires so much work behind the scenes because even us just doing this podcast requires so much work behind the scenes. And I told her, like, she shared in her latest binge episode that she struggled a lot with her mental health last year. She was having a lot of panic attacks. And for one, I kind of just thanked her. I was like, thank you for being so vulnerable, because it kind of proves that you truly never know what someone's going through. It can seem like they have it all together, but they're literally breaking apart, and you would never know because Peyton was always posting content. Like, never missed like a Monday upload, never missed a binge upload. And what she does takes a lot of planning of like looking into the cases. And for me, I'm someone who's struggled because when I'm feeling really down, it is so hard to do even the things you love. Mm-hmm. So I was just, and she messaged back and was like, thank you. And like, just kind of like, for one, I just think that's so nice that she messaged back to me. But yeah, it's crazy how you can not know that something's going on in someone's life because everything online does appear so well, mm-hmm. But yeah, I was just like, yeah. And like you said, it's a highlight reel. Most of the things that we share online, I do think some creators try to be more vulnerable online. Most of the things that we share online are the good stuff or what we're proud of. And I think to some degree that makes me feel like a fraud. Like, I deal a lot with feeling like a fraud.
I mean, it's obviously I wouldn't say you're a fraud, but I mean, because when I think of fraud, you think of someone who's like committed a crime or something, or being like fake. Mike Ross, we just finished watching Suits. That's a whole other. We could do a whole podcast on that if we wanted to. But I think I don't know if the right word or the right thing to say in this case would be like imposter syndrome. I don't know.
I think it is imposter syndrome because it 100% is imposter syndrome, but it's not something that's just something that impacts me in like my work life. It also, I feel like a fraud when my dad told me he was proud of me, I was like, well, if he knew, like really, really knew me, and this is like my parents who probably do know me pretty well. I was like, if he really knew me, like he wouldn't say that. And that's how I feel when people tell me good things, is like, no, like if they knew other information outside this context, they wouldn't be happy for me or proud of me or think that I'm smart. And obviously that's something I've got to work through. But I feel like when I post something online, like even I think this podcast has been the perfect example too, is this podcast is centered around growth and, like we said, becoming the best version of yourself, and really just kind of our journeys as we grow and learn and struggle and cry, all of it. But I think what also made me fall off of like not like even asking you to film episodes is that I felt like I wasn't growing. I felt like, who am I to tell you how you should go, or who am I to even like do any of this? That's kind of how I started to feel, because I felt so bad about myself. I was like, I have no authority to be telling you because I'm a fucking mess. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's completely okay to. I think it's completely okay to feel that way, because a lot of us don't have things together. I think most people that figured it out, right? You know, that like if we're talking content creation, right?
Yeah.
They figured out how to master their craft, whatever it is they're doing, by trying and failing. Like, you know, making a video didn't work, going 100 videos in didn't work, and then boom, like they finally crafted the perfect way to explain like topics online, whether it's through podcast format. And then they broke out and they did a thing, but no one saw those like 100 misses, you know.
Yeah,
that they
no
did
one
along
saw
the
the
way.
failure. Everyone was just like, oh, like overnight.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things about even this podcast is if you go, we can even see the subtle changes and the subtle ways that we've evolved. If you go back to like episode 1, or even not even episode 1, episode 0, which we never uploaded.
Yes.
It's just sitting on my hard drive somewhere, and even looking at that, you're like, wow, like that was such a different way of the way we explain things, the way that things are set up. And I think that this podcast, along with everything else that you create personally, I create personally, is a way for us to get over the fear of like feeling like a fraud, because you're out there doing, and whether it's educating in this sense, or if it's something you're teaching to somebody else in another piece of content. But yeah, no, it helps you along the way, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's something that when you're setting, like for me, when you're setting goals for the new year, like I said, you want to be realistic, but I think you have to go in. It's like a balance. You do want to be ambitious, right? If there's truly a goal you want to achieve and that's ambitious, don't say, oh, I can't do this. Try to go after it. But I think that there's a fear in like looking at the end of the year and be like, what if I didn't accomplish this? I'm a failure. I think that's when you start to feel like, oh, I failed because I didn't like do as well, or it didn't work out. I think we all fear like falling on our face, because I know when there's things I've wanted to do, or even like I've had to learn throughout work that sometimes the first draft, I used to be first draft, final draft. Like I gave this my all, it's perfect. And in my eyes, it was perfect. But then you give it to someone else like, oh yeah, you can fix this and this. And I'm like, this was my final version of this. What are you talking about? And when I didn't get it right the first time in the eyes of someone else, I felt like, damn, I suck. Like I literally said it to my manager one day. She was helping me with a deck I was creating. I was so proud of this. I was like, this is a good deck. Like, 100% makes sense. And she looked, I obviously asked her because I was like, I want to get better. I want to be better at this part of my job, making sure I'm providing the right information in the right way. And she had so many comments, and I was like, please tell me I'm not the only one who sucks at this. Because obviously, if I'm the only one, then it sucks more for me, because I'm like, dang, I really do suck. But if someone else struggles with it, I don't feel as bad, because I'm like, someone else is also struggling with this. But yeah, I've had to kind of try to fix that mindset too, of like, you have to fail to learn. You know, you do. Like, it's truly the only way. Like, we can't avoid it. I think I've tried to avoid failure for so long because it genuinely scares the shit out of me. I don't want other people to see my failures, but they will. Inevitably, they will. Like, if you're going after something that you truly want, people will know. The thing is, maybe they won't even say it, but it'll feel like they know, you know? Sometimes you don't share things with someone else, but you think that they know, you know? They can see right through me. Do you ever feel like that? Like someone can see right through you?
Yeah, I mean, and it comes and goes. I think I've definitely have felt that. You know, I failed publicly many times in my life, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, no, definitely, it's something that you have to get over that fear, you know, or else you're never going to move forward. You're never wanting. I mean, the fact that you decided to come up with this podcast and us working together on this, like, that's a big step, you know, and getting over that fear, in my opinion.
But you know, it took us forever to actually do it. I came up with this podcast like, I want to say like 3 years ago, and we didn't start doing it till like 2 years ago, because the first year we had all the stuff, and we just didn't do anything. And I think, like, especially in the beginning of the year, you see a lot of just do it. You know, Nike's like, just do it, or just get started. You know, all you got to do is take the first step. And it seems very simple. It really does. But to me, I tend to focus on like the intricacies of what even the first step entails, or figuring out what the next best step is. I had like a meeting with my manager last week, and I've been really stuck on this one project, and it was that kind of stuck of like, I don't even know what to do next. There's so many things I could do. Like, I can think of all the things I'd want to do, but I don't even know what the next best step is, because I'm scared like of making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you really have to, for one, consult with other people. If there's someone that you can't talk to about, like, get their opinion and advice, I think that's helpful. But you have to break things down. Like, what does the next, like, even the tiniest thing, what's the smallest thing you can do, and break that down and take bit by bit each day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just think it's hard to it's hard to go after things we want, because we know, like, I think my fear too is also, what if I'm not good at the thing I want, you know? That was like why I used to do a lot of writing, and I wouldn't share it with everyone. But then when I got to college, I was like a freshman, and one of my TAs was like, "You're a really good writer. Like, you should do something with it." And so I started a blog, and I would share it like with people. But I haven't done as much writing recently, and like when I think to why, some of it comes down to time, but some of it also comes down to, what if I put all my effort and energy into this and I'm not good? You know, what if the final work isn't good and I've spent all this time doing it?
You obviously, you gotta at least give yourself some credit for even doing it in the first place. I think we often tend to forget that the fact that you attempted something. In this case, you attempted to actually write a book or whatever it was. And you forget the fact that, hey, at least you tried. And maybe that's the next step forward, is like, oh, now I learned from that. Now how do I apply what I learned from that to the next thing?
But I think I fear, like, that alone, like, what if, like, that failure alone would probably be heartbreaking? You know, like, what if...
Yeah, it could be for some, I think. I mean, in this case, it was for you, right?
What?
I mean, if the writing aspect of it?
What?
I mean, not for you, I guess. I mean, you haven't written in a while. Not
yeah,
to say
I haven't failed because I didn't
Yeah.
finish like something that I felt like was crap. But I think that sometimes what prevents me from like continuing with like writing is, that fail of like, what if like my final work, or like, you know, my dream is to have like a book published, you know, and what if the first thing isn't good, you know? And I guess the thing is, a lot of people say your first video, your first, you know, anything isn't going to be good. And I've always been that person that wants it to, though.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, who doesn't want their first project, their first video, their first whatever, like, to be like the thing that catapults them into, you know, them making money. If it's money you're going after, if it's just, you know, recognition or whatever the case is, like, who doesn't want that? Like, it's very rare for someone to do one thing right the first time and them, you know, hit the jackpot. It's very rare. So that's why, like, you gotta continue to work for it and push for it.
Yeah. I think so. And I just think I get nervous about the potential for failure, or knowing that failure is inevitable along the way, and getting up once I failed, you know, getting back on my feet and just continuing. And I think, I've been fighting with the fact that these things are my passion. I love writing, and I wish I spent more time doing it, and that's obviously actually one of my goals this year, is to dedicate time each week to write. But even though it's my passion, I think you can get very, like, at least with me, I get very discouraged easily. So, but you just gotta, I guess what is it, fail forward?
Fail forward,
You gotta fail forward. That's the motto of this year. Fail fail. I can't say it.
Fail
forward. I think the other thing too, when you think about the New Year's, I think you become way more aware of time and how quickly time goes by.
Yeah. I feel like the older you get, that happens. For example, we were just on vacation, right?
Yeah.
9 days, right?
Yeah.
Did not feel like 9 days
Felt like
at all.
a weekend. I was
No,
like,
it felt like
weekends.
it felt like a Labor Day weekend. That's what
Yeah.
it felt like. And we were getting up at decent times. You know, we were trying to do as much as we could. You know, to ourselves, whether it was going to a coffee shop, checking out like a place we haven't gone to,
Visiting family,
spending time with family, but it just went by so quickly. I don't know why, and I feel like I feel like the older you get, you realize this more, and when it comes to like working on a project, when it comes to working on something you're passionate about, I feel like you're even more aware of time. You come, like for example, I come home from work, you know, around 6 o'clock, sometimes a little later, depending on what's going on. And when you get home, you're kind of, you know, you might be drained, but there might be things you have to do. You're gonna have dinner, right? But then by the time all that's said and done, I still probably have like 3 or maybe 4 hours if I wanted to stay up until like midnight doing something. And I remember that's what I used to do. And it reminded me of the fact that like there is technically time for me to do what I want to do on my personal account, on personal stuff. It's just making sure I commit to that. You know, we just got done watching
Gran Turismo,
which is a great movie.
So you gotta commit.
And it really reminded me of the fact
I
that
wonder if you get a clip of that, like commit.
Yeah, you gotta commit. And oftentimes people hesitate. Like they see like I need to go here. In this case, like driving wise, it's a really good metaphor. Like you have the time, you have the space to do it. All you gotta do is commit. And if you don't commit, you fail, and you end up crashing or spinning out. And I think it's a great metaphor for life. Is like if you really want to achieve something, whatever that is, you have to commit to it. You have to put a 100% into it. And oftentimes I know there's things that happen in life. There's balance though. Yeah,
I think
of course.
when you mentioned like, I'd have to stay up till 12. Okay, well, what if you're getting up at 5 as well? And then so you're limiting your sleep. That's not necessarily good for your body too.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So you've got to like balance it with like what's obviously that's good professionally. Like say if you're going after a goal professionally, it's good for your career. Is it good for your health? Like are you balancing all of the things that truly matter too? Is it good? Like, like does it incorporate like family time, because that's
what I was saying is that
so
when you come home and all that, so.
you've got to balance it. I do think you've got to commit to it. It's got to be something that you are dedicating time to every day, every week. There's got to be dedicated time for it. That's actually my word of the year is like dedication. But there's also the balancing act that you have to do with that. And so it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I was telling you this yesterday, but there was a LinkedIn post I was reading, and I'm very much active on LinkedIn. I get a lot of like information from other SEOs on there, and someone was like, if you're an SEO, an in-house SEO, like basically you should have a side project because you have a skill that can make income. And I agree with that statement. It's a great skill for one, and it can make you income on the side. But I was looking at the comments. I always love when I see a controversial post, and I knew it was going to be controversial. I was like, I'm going to look at the comments, see what other people say. Because I was thinking, honestly, people were going to agree with this man. I was like, yeah. They're going to be like, yes, what the heck? Why aren't you monetizing it? But a lot of people were like the opposite. One person was like, because we want to spend time with our kids when we get home, or if you do that for a job, I'm sure everyone wants to also work when they get home. Just a lot more people nowadays are in favor of balance, being able to like disconnect. Even though like I tell you all the time, I love my job. I've learned a lot last year from my job, and I'm going to continue learning. But there's some days where I'm just like, I need to disconnect from it all. I need to hard reset. So I think that we're becoming way more aware of, for one, time. You only get so much time on this earth. How do you want to spend it. Because, and how do you balance it all? We all need money for one, so we've got to work. And if you want to reach a certain like financial goal, obviously it might mean, yes, take up something on the side. But it's got to be what works for you. I don't think you should do it because everyone's telling you this is the only way to survive. There's several ways to survive. And yeah, I become way more aware of time because now I'm turning 26 this year, and I still feel like, I don't know, I feel like I graduated college like last year, and I didn't. I graduated in 2020, and now it's been almost 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
It'll be 4 years this
right?
year
Yeah.
in May, and even farther away from when I graduated high school. So now I'm just so aware of how quickly time passes, especially after you're out of, I feel like college didn't go by quickly. I feel like I was actually able to enjoy it and experience it. It felt like kind of slow motion when I was there. But now I feel like each year goes by quicker. Like we moved, it'll be a year that we've lived here in February. And I'm just like, what the heck? It does not feel like we've lived in Nashville a year.
It hasn't. Well, obviously it hasn't yet, but it feels like it hasn't at all. Like it feels like we've just been here a couple months. I feel like, yeah, again, time, being aware of the time, everything, like it just goes by so quickly.
Yeah, and I think that we always feel we need more time.
Yeah.
You know, if I had a dime for every time, I said I wish I had more time, man, I'd be rich. Because I think that is what's it called? An obstacle, like all areas of life. We're like, if only we had more time for this project, more time to spend with loved ones, more time to do the things we loved. It always comes down to like, we don't have time. And I think to your point, you make time. You can make the time with the 24 hours we have in a day. But I think there's also those people who go on podcasts and they're like, there's 24 hours of the day. I sleep for 4. You know what? My first shift is 8 hours. And then I take a 20-minute meditation and I do 8 more hours. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, people, like, that's not realistic for everyone. I remember a guy was like, there's so much time in the day. People are just lazy. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case either. I think it can feel like that because, yes, we're trying to, again, balance all of the things that we want in our life without having to sacrifice, which I think in some cases we do need to figure out where can we sacrifice to get that time that we're looking for.
Time awareness, being aware of all the time we have in the day and
in a week.
In a month, in a year, and how many seconds we have left.
Yeah, it's like down to the second. Imagine, like, I think that, like, I hear some of those gurus talking on podcasts, be like, yeah, there's so much time, and, like, they're planning down to, like, the second, and I'm like, that just seems stressful. Of, like, okay, 4:15 a.m. with 15 seconds, we gotta eat our egg yolk or do our meditation. Like, that's just, I think that's what makes people think that, like, not trust you. I feel like that doesn't build trust when you're just like exaggerated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my little rant. I always laugh though when I see those. There's a guy who has a podcast. I don't listen to the podcast, but I see clips on TikTok who will react to videos of like, I don't know what you call them. I call them gurus because that's what I feel like guru is such a like, I don't want to say cringy term, but when I think of guru, I think of slimy car salesman. That's what I think of. What do you think of when you're guru?
I think gurus have gotten a bad name.
Yes.
They have, as of late at least, because there are people that have scammed people out of a crap ton of money by selling some like fake course, like whether it's a fake course or it's like you're oversold and then you join and you pay that whatever fee it was and then you see the program and it's like, this is literally stuff I could have gotten for free on YouTube or Google or it's
like you're not providing any additional value.
Yeah, like nowadays, like, I mean, there's a couple gurus that I actually follow, like they're on YouTube and they have provided like great resources for like those that are looking to like obviously get into the game of creating content, but there's others like that. Yeah, they've definitely scammed people.
I don't know if it comes down to scamming. I just think it comes down to like, again, like exaggeration. This is like a little
like exaggerating results. I know it's something too.
Not exaggerating results, but what's it called? This is like our tangent. It's not necessarily related to all of this, but I think it comes down to being exaggerated, saying like this is the best way to live your life. Like, for a long time, there were a bunch of gurus that saying, like, or like, I don't know, gurus, life coaches, all the same to me at this point, that waking up early is like the only way. But, you know, some people truly, I think, I'm not a doctor, so I can't like say this for sure. But I feel that there are some people who, no matter what they do, they're not going to be a morning person. They're a night owl. And if they can be productive in the other hours of the day, does it really matter if they get up at 5 a.m.? You know, like, it doesn't. And there was the other thing that, like, oh, well, if you get up at 5 a.m., but you're going to bed at 8 p.m., like, you essentially have the same amount of time as someone who's getting up later and staying up later.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any difference. So, like, there's not a huge argument there. But, yeah, I think that they exaggerate things, and it makes people... It gives them the bad rep to some people who might actually have good advice. You know, might actually be a genuine, like, person wanting to help others live their life more fruitfully or better.
Yeah.
But I don't think, again, we've talked a lot about, like, personal growth and self-help on here, too. I think everyone's situation is different, and you have to find what works for you. And for someone to say, like, I have exactly what you need, it's like, no, you'd probably have to get to know the person to, like, figure out. Maybe you can let them know what they do need, but it can't just be what you're telling everyone else. It has to be kind of, what's the word? Centered around them.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, gurus, I don't know. It makes me laugh because I've seen a lot of videos where people are like making fun of how ridiculous they sound, and how much word vomit they use. Mm-hmm. Like, you've heard of that, like, word vomit? Yeah. They're just, like, saying all of these words, saying a bunch of stuff and making it sound, like smart and confident and like they've cracked the code. Like, this is the answer. I've cracked the code. I've discovered, you know. And maybe they have. Maybe, you know, I think truly it does work for them. And you know what? A lot of them are successful, you know. Probably have more money than me, and good for them. But, yeah, don't be scamming other people just because it works for you. But yeah, I don't know how we got into that topic. I think the other thing I think of when I think of the new year, though, is professional expectations. You know, what we want to accomplish as in our careers.
Yeah, I know. That's definitely one other thing, too. I think we should also, especially if you're working in, I don't know, if you're working in marketing or maybe another career path that you have, I think you should always set a goal for you to achieve.
Well, I was kind of going the opposite way there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not to say you shouldn't set a goal, but I think that you might feel pressured in the beginning of the year. Like, for instance, I think this week I have, like, my performance review for the previous quarter. Not for last year, but for the previous quarter. And because we do quarterly reviews. And it's helpful to look at yourself quarter by quarter versus waiting till the end of the year to see how you performed in the previous year. So I have had a pretty good understanding of my performance throughout last year, and obviously I'll be learning about what my manager thought my performance was the previous quarter. But I think that there's a lot of like pressure to a lot of pressure you put on yourself, at least I do too, in the workplace when it comes to New Year of, man, am I going to be at the same place this time next year? You know, ideally for me, this is something, again, I'm having to learn to go slower, because in previous roles, I've moved ahead pretty quickly. You know, I've been promoted pretty quickly, and that's always how I've wanted to be, like, go, 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 next role, next role, next role. And I can tell that's not how it's going to be where I'm currently at, and not because I do a poor job, but because there's just a lot I have to learn. And that's kind of a struggle for me, because ideally I would have liked to be on track to get promoted by the time my 1 year mark hits, which is in April. So technically I still have time, right? But I don't think it'll happen, and not because like I don't want it to happen, but because I wouldn't put myself in the position to fail. If they offered me like a promotion now, I'd be like, I'm not ready. And like I had to be able, like, obviously part of me would be like, yes, 100%, like I'm the best. But then another part of me would have to be honest, be like, I'm not ready for this. I need to learn. I need to put myself in the best situation to do a good job. And right now I'm not. So, but I do think sometimes we feel that we also have to move forward in our job, and the way that we see moving forward typically is through promotions, through pay raises. But there are other ways you can move forward in your job too and set goals.
I think so too. There's little ways that you could.
Yeah.
You can. Yeah, for sure.
Like how?
Like you're like how? Explain.
Explain, Caesar.
I mean, like maybe it's let's say you work in marketing, you want to increase the reach of your business or your content or whatever the case is, coming up with new and innovative ways that are currently working for, I mean, not to say like working for other people, but maybe there's like a trend or something that you're not doing that you can then like apply some of that, knowledge that you learn from that to your own like business or blog or whatever the case is. Especially when it comes to like content, is like video content. Oh gosh. There's evidence of things that you can see, like, wait, this person just like is popping off on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or whatever. Like, what are they doing differently? What niche are they in? Like, why are they, blowing up? Maybe it's their personality. Maybe it's the way they're creating their content. Maybe it's the format. There's obviously different niches and different industries, but you can see like them doing something different. Maybe you can apply that thing they're doing to your niche. Not to say you're copying them, but you're taking inspiration from them. And oftentimes that can lead to success, especially when it comes to like, oh shoot, like I can do that similar thing, but on my niche. Like I can maybe make my content a little bit more snappy or entertaining, and I will still get my message across or entertain people or educate people by just making it in this specific way, in this specific manner. As long as it doesn't make you look inauthentic. That's the other issue too. Is like oftentimes doing it the wrong way, you'll look inauthentic doing it.
Yeah, I think the key there is learning from others and taking the time to analyze. Like if we both work in marketing, and something that we do frequently is competitor analysis. I work in SEO, so typically when I'm doing competitor analysis, I'm looking at like what keywords they're targeting, how they're targeting them, like how they're ranking on the first page for a term we want, what we could do to beat them, essentially, what value could we provide that they're not providing. But it's kind of funny too, because I think when we look at like competitors or like we look at other people, we assume that it's working for them. Obviously, like on TikTok, if we're talking about video content, you would assume like, oh, they're getting views, so this is clearly working for them. But you can't see the back end of like, are they monetizing this? Is this actually working for them? And I think something that we've discussed recently, like just in SEO, is doing competitor research makes the assumption that your competitor in SEO has an SEO strategy. Like they could very well have no strategy, and you're just like, oh, they're doing well because you're looking at the metrics you have access to, but we don't know that that's converting. We don't know if it's actually helping their business, so it's not always the end-all be-all. But I do think you can also be the person, which I think you do a great job of from what I know in your role, is making your own theories based on what you see and testing out. Like, this is my hypothesis. We're going to test this out. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we know it doesn't work, and that's something that I want to challenge myself this year in like my career, is to come up with more of my own theories as an SEO and test them out, because that's what makes you stand out, because you're actually taking what you're seeing because you're working in this industry and applying it in different ways, which I think is a challenge for all people, because the way that we've learned is specifically from, we've learned from textbook of this is how you do it. So doing something else is always a challenge because you've learned how to do it one way. You don't want to try to do it another. But yeah, I think that there's, when you're wanting to advance in your career, like a goal you can set doesn't have to be a promotion. It could be, I want to become an expert in this specific niche. I want to spend more time or dedicate time during my work week to research what's going on in my industry. Something that I love that my current company does is every week we have an SEO sync and we go over industry updates. Were there any new algorithm changes, Google core updates, or is there anything like even smaller that you saw like in, I say it's funny because we talked about gurus, but there are like SEO gurus that I do trust. That'll often look, what are they saying about SEO and different like niches of SEO, and like what are they preaching to do? I say preaching, but and trying those out because it's an evolving space. And if you work in marketing, it's always going to be evolving. You're never like, yes, you could have like cracked the code in a sense, but it's going to continue to evolve, and you're going to have to continue to evolve with it if you want to be successful. And I think that's a struggle if you work in marketing, which most people are like, marketing so easy. It's really not. A lot of people struggle with marketing and marketing their business because it's an evolving landscape, and you can't do what you were doing 20 years ago. Brands have to adapt. So
adapt to
I could also have a marketing podcast because I'm so passionate about all things marketing. But yeah, it's crazy. You just have to want to learn. I think at the end of the day, it's great to set goals for yourself, but we have to reflect and think, why are we setting them? Are they realistic for us? Is this something we actually want to accomplish at the end of the day? Is this something that's going to bring you joy and happiness? And if it is, go for it. If you fail, okay. We have to be okay with failure. That's something I'm telling myself. Like, believe me, I'm going to admit right now, that's something I'm very much not okay with right now. So I don't want to be a fraud and say I'm okay with failure, because I'm not at this moment. It really hurts my heart, but we're going to be okay with failure. And I think not put so much pressure on yourself. I think 2024 should be a year where we don't put unnecessary pressure on ourselves to completely 180. Small changes will add up over time. So if you do something and you like are consistent 365 days, it may not seem big day to day, but it might be big month over month, year over year. And that's all you can do, like I think we have to be gentle, which I feel like, boomers and people be like, gentle, of course. She wants to be gentle. But we have to be gentle with ourselves and not put unnecessary pressure on, because I think that's what kind of makes us not get started at all. It makes it so we just never go after the thing we actually want because we feel all this pressure, and, maybe some of it's warranted, but others, I put unnecessary pressure on myself at all times. Any last thoughts, Caesar, for the people, for our first episode of 2024?
For those of you watching, if you come to the end of this podcast, I want to just say that you're going to have a great year. Whatever goals you have, you can achieve them as long as you commit. I think that's the biggest thing I would say out of this. Commit. If that movie didn't remind me of like my own life, is that there's passions and projects that I loved in the past and still love now. There's obviously certain things that that you can't do because of like financial. Maybe you don't have the money for it, but there can be ways for you to do it in like a small way. Like one of the biggest things that I've seen that I continue to see even nowadays is like, oh, I want to create content, but I need like a $3,000 or $5,000 camera. It's like, what kind of phone do you have? Oh, I have the latest iPhone 15. Like, use your phone. Like, it's perfect. It's all you need. They're like, really? I was like, yeah, it's literally all you need.
Most content creators that like got big were using their phone at first.
And phones, even nowadays, like they've gotten even better. Like, sure, like I would, if there's anything that I would invest in, it would be lighting, because that could make a big difference with an iPhone still.
I feel like we always relate this stuff back to content.
Yeah, I do, because it's something. I think it's because it's something that we live and breathe, right? Yeah. So, but if you're doing anything else in your life, whether maybe you're trying to lose weight or you want to run a marathon this year, like you can do it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Or if you just want to be better than last year, determine what that looks like for you. Mm-hmm. Being better than last year could mean a lot of things, or you may want to stay the same, and that's okay too. Growth looks different for everybody, and we're kind of all on our own path, so we need to do what works for us. But thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Growing Together podcast. This is going to be an incredible year for all of us. We hope there's many more of you by the end of the year. This has been Growing Together with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope you have a great year and come back to listen on Monday.
See you guys later.